everyone. I've been reading the chat, and Dave was talking about pizza and chili, and now I want a chili pizza, which sounds insane. Can you hear me okay? We're gonna get started here. Mitch, I will send you my address if you want to send me a pizza. Hey everybody, let's get going. Welcome to the January club meeting for the Oklahoma City Astronomy Club. My name is Danny MacDonald. I am broadcasting from my darkened apartment right now. Sorry for the switcheroo. We were supposed to be in the Science Museum, but as you probably saw, there was a lot of snow. And I got out today, and the roads were fine, like in the afternoon, but the problem is refreezing, right? So if we were all at SMO, then by the time the club meeting would end, the roads would refreeze, and then that would be a bad time. So just thought it would be safer and easier. We know there are a lot of people that that come from outside of the metro, where I saw someone in chat say that they don't have snowplows where they are. So like my parents live on a dirt road. Like there's no telling when they'll get to go to Brahms again, quite frankly. So thank you all for joining us. It looks like we have 53 people here right now. That's great. Welcome all of you, and I saw that there were a couple of new people here too. Thank you for checking us out, seeing what we're all about. This is going to be kind of an abbreviated sort of meeting. It's January, it's cold, there's clouds are out just nonstop. So, there's not that much. But we do have some events. And so let's get into that. First of all, on Monday, we have an occultation of Mars. So if you want to see the moon eat Mars. Let's see, I can make this a bit bigger. Yeah. So Monday night, it looks like it's about 7:30. Go outside, find where the moon is. Hopefully it's not hidden by clouds. And you can see Mars. Mars is the star-looking thing that's bright red. If you've never gone out and looked at Mars before, it does look very red. And you will see that star kind of go behind the moon and then come out the other side. So very, very cool. Make sure you get out and you see that. That will be super cool. Tomorrow night, we were set to have a novice session. These sessions are for people that maybe are new to the club, that maybe they got a telescope for Christmas, they don't know how to use it. So we try to do these quarterly sessions. I don't actually think the one tomorrow is going to happen just because it's so cold and gross outside. If you are interested in going, though, be sure to post in our club discussion board about that. And if you don't know how to get to that, just stick with us through the end of the talk, and I will show you how that's all done. If you can wait a couple of weeks, on the 25th is our members night at CRO. CRO stands for Cheddar Ranch Observatory. It is the club's private observatory. It is about an hour and a half away from the metro, out by Watonga. So dark skies out there, way darker than you can get here. There's a building there that's got heat and air for the summertime. But heat, there's internet, there's concrete pads to set your stuff up onto. So if you want to do some serious observing, be sure to check that out. That is also going to be on our discussion board, especially if you've never been before. You will want to check that out to make sure that you either get an escort or you know where to go. On the 28th is our board meeting. So all our board members get together in a conference room inside of a library, and we talk about CRO, we talk about club business, we talk about the Okie Tech Star Party that's in September. Do all that stuff. That is on the 28th. And all this stuff is on our club calendar that you can see at www.okcastroclub.com. February the 1st is another member night out at CRO. So if you can't go to the one on the 25th, then the next weekend there is another one. And then on February the 7th is our club meeting for February. So be sure to come to that. Hopefully that's our club meeting is on the 14th. On the 7th is our first Friday public night viewing. Not Mike Mitchell. If you are in the chat, then you might drop some details about that. And that looks like it. So be sure to come to our meeting on the 14th. Hopefully that one is at the Science Museum. Fingers crossed. One thing I want to point out before I throw it to Eileen and we get to our speaker is I want to show you this. So in January, our new team of board members takes office. And this year we have a new newsletter editor. So if you didn't know that, then we publish a monthly newsletter. I did it for a long time before I took over the role as vice president. Now it is put together by Jolie Caperton, who did a fantastic job. So if you've not checked out our newsletter yet, then just go to our website, and then there is a link along the left to the newsletter, where there's just all sorts of cool stuff about what's going on, what's coming up, and yeah, it's great, and I'm glad that she is doing that. So be sure to check that out when you get a chance. Oh, okay. See, I'm gonna scroll through the chat here and see if I missed anything. Dave says that Mars is going to be the closest tomorrow night. So be sure to check that out. And Mike there's giving us some information about First Friday. I don't see anyone in here say they were going to send me that pizza though. So we need someone to, maybe one of you can get on that. While I wait on the pizza, I am going to throw it over to Eileen. I'm sure she has some things to talk about, and she will introduce our speaker for the evening.
Evening. Can everyone hear?
Eileen.
So. First of all, let me make sure I'm unmuted. Yes, I am. I have some sad news to make people aware of, because we just heard today that Ed Eyert lost his son. So some of you who've worked with J.D. McCarty Center, his son Ben, 26 years old, died. It's a cancer situation. I'll post more on the discussion board when I hear more about services. I also want to put you on alert for February 14th that I had invited a speaker from JPL. I'm kind of giving him a pass because things are pretty bad out in the area. If he says he can do it, that's great, but I'm not expecting him. So I also give an open invitation to any of you so that we don't have to Zoom. A lot of you are capable of giving presentations. So I would love you to email me or, put a note in the chat and let us know. So without any other further ado, let me tell you a little bit about Jack Howard. I've known Jack since 2018 because he is a fellow Astronomy and Chile Education Ambassador. And so he was part of the program, but he got to go in January of 2018, whereas I had to go in June. So I experienced winter, Jack experienced summer. But he was part of the group that helped to prepare my group to go down. And so that's how I've met him. And we've only, except for the Zooms that we probably did as part of ASIP, this is the first time I've had a chance to talk to him in person. He is currently an adjunct instructor in physics and astronomy at Rowan-Cabarrus Community College in Salisbury, North Carolina. He assures me that he doesn't think they've had much snow. His wife thinks they've had a blizzard. And when the movie Interstellar came out, it generated a lot of interest in and questions about the possibility of traveling to other star systems. We're going to take a look at the challenges and what it would take to overcome them. And this would lead us to the final question of when all this might happen. So interstellar travel is science, fact, and fiction is the topic for tonight. But let me share a little bit about Jack. Like many of us in the same age range, Our interests began in the early days of the space race. And so Jack, just like me, followed every single launch in the 60s and beyond. When he was studying physics in college, he had the opportunity to spend a month at Kitt Peak National Observatory doing research on variable stars. And I have to ask him who his mentor was. During that research, he was able to actually publish a short paper in the Astrophysical Journal. So after college, he was admitted to grad school in astronomy at the University of Texas. But alas, there was no money to follow that dream. And life took him in other directions, especially into the business community. Well, after so many years, he returned to the classroom in 1995, teaching math and physics. He started the astronomy program at RC Community College, and he became the first full-time instructor in the program. At the same time, he earned a master's degree in astronomy from James Cook University, and I'm pretty sure that one is in Australia. And the people who've gone through it say it's a tough master's program, but a wonderful one. Although currently retired from full-time teaching, he actively continues teaching astronomy, physics, and math at community colleges in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, and he serves on many advisory committees. He's been the recipient of an Excellence in Teaching Award, and then over the past few decades, recent decades, he has been all over the United States and to Chile. He currently does a tremendous amount of educational outreach because he uses that to promote science literacy for all ages. And he serves as a volunteer outreach educator in NASA's Solar System Ambassador Program. So if any of you have questions about that, this is a good person to ask. He's an active member of their local community, their local astronomy clubs, and his hobbies, when time allows, include instrumental music, mainly piano and clarinet, and flying airplanes. Oh boy. Okay. So without any other further ado, and I'm going to try and monitor questions in the chat along with other people. So I give you Mr. Jack Howard.
Okay, thank you, Eileen. I'm sitting here smiling at myself about what a wonderful person you say that I am. If you ever meet me live and in person, I may tarnish that a little bit. I'm like you, I'm a teacher at heart and love doing it in almost any circumstance. I'm assuming right now that Danny has the PowerPoint up and you can see the title slide. If that is wrong, put something in the chat.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Eileen and Danny don't know that I have the YouTube up on another monitor so I can watch the chat as well. What I'm going
Okay.
to talk about here came about, uh, I think it was 2017, 28, somewhere around there. The movie Interstellar with Matthew McConaughey came out, and a lot of my students at the time started asking a lot of questions. And I ended up putting a program together, and this is probably my most frequently requested program. What we're going to talk about here today is a dream that we've had for a long time. If you're of the age that Eileen mentioned that she and I have reached, we're not going to talk about numbers there. I don't want anybody to know I'm in my mid 70s. Um, you remember Star Trek, and the tagline on that was to boldly go where no man has gone before. And that we thought was an idea that we originated in the 60s. And game show honker, not so. We're going to look at what it takes. We're going to look at how long that dream has been around and how it has developed to where it is today. We're going to look at what technology we have that would enable travel to different systems. And we're going to look at some problems that have not been overcome. And we'll eventually get to the question, is this going to happen anytime soon? I'm not going to give away what that answer is. We'll get to that in a few minutes. Let's start by thinking about local travel. You may have done this over the Christmas or Thanksgiving holidays. My wife and I did all our travel between the holidays. Rates are cheaper. We get to see everybody, and then Christmas at home by ourselves is nice and quiet. What does it take to travel? First, you've got to have a vehicle. This car looks curiously like mine. I did not have one like this when I put this slide on there, but I since have gotten a red Chevy Cruze, and it looks almost like this one right here. But if you're going to go somewhere, you've got to have something to travel in. And here's the kicker. You have to have fuel for it. Ask yourselves, how far you fill up your car, how far can you drive? Okay, now that you got that number, you're looking for a gas station. Keep that in mind. If the trip is long enough, you need food. Stop at a restaurant. That's handy if you're driving. It's not so handy if you're flying. You get whatever the airline serves. I have no editorial comments on there because there are ladies watching, and my mother told me not to talk that way. When you get where you're going, or even stopping en route, you need a place to stay. So we've got requirements for travel right here: a vehicle, fuel for it, food for the passengers and crew, and a place to sleep. Now, think about the International Space Station. You realize, okay, vehicle, not going anywhere, so they don't need fuel. It's just going around in circles. And we keep them supplied with food, and they have their sleeping quarters there in the International Space Station. But we're talking about going somewhere else. Now, where could we go? Do we have any potential destinations? We sure do. Eileen and I can remember when we did not know about any planets orbiting other stars, but in the last 20 or 30 years, discovering extrasolar planets has literally exploded. We know about more than 7,000 planets in more than 5,000 systems, and lots of solar systems like ours with multiple planets. Now, being human, we tend to look for what we know and what we need. You're probably familiar with the term habitable zone or the Goldilocks zone. That's around another star where the planet could have the right temperature for liquid water on the surface. Now, I want to point out here, this is one thing a lot of articles about this miss. They say if it's too close to the star, like Venus, it's going to be too hot. If it's too far away, like Mars, it's going to be too cold. What they leave out is that to have liquid water on the surface, you have to have an atmosphere as well. On Earth, we have liquid water, A, because we have the right temperature, and also B, because we have atmospheric pressure that allows that. If you want to find out how this is true, think about if you live in a mountainous area, look on a box of cake mix and it'll tell you if you're over 5,000 feet, you have to do such and such and so and so. The reason for that is as you go higher, atmospheric pressure gets less and water boils at a lower temperature. If you're ever an astronaut in space, take a jar of water with you, and when you're out on a spacewalk, take the lid off and see what happens. No atmosphere, no pressure, that water will boil away instantly. So we're looking for planets that have the right temperature and an atmosphere that will permit liquid water on the surface. We do this, we think about this because liquid water seems to be absolutely necessary for life as we know it. When I first did this program, the TRAPPIST system with 7 planets was a recent discovery. And what got people excited was a lot of those planets are in the habitable zone around that star. Now, it turns out they're probably not good candidates because they're mostly tidally locked with that star, one side perpetually facing the sun. But it's an interesting system, and it got us thinking about a lot of different locations we might go. At the time, NASA even came out with some promotional posters envisioning what it might be like to travel to any of these star systems, including this one right here. I don't know the distance to that, but 7 planets sounds like, ooh, let's go visit, take a cruise. Closer to home, if we wanted to travel to a nearer star system, the most likely candidate would be Proxima Centauri, which is the closest star system to our sun. It's actually a system of 3 stars called Alpha Centauri. Proxima Centauri b is the one that is closest to us, so we think, ooh, closest star. How can we get there? Well, the problem is, even though it's close on space terms, 4 1/4 light years, the way we would get there presents a problem. Usain Bolt, top speed, which he can only maintain for a few seconds, take 100 million years. Cheetah, 38 billion years. That thrust SSC is supersonic car. It has broken the sound barrier to Bonneville Salt Flats. Take 3 or 4 million years. Concorde, 2 million years. New Horizons at the time was the fastest thing we'd ever launched. We've had spacecraft go faster than that now, but we're still talking about tens of thousands of years to get there. The Millennium Falcon, if you're a Star Wars fan and a science teacher, you roll your eyes back when he said he could make the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs. Parsecs is a unit of distance, not time or speed,
Hmm.
but it's still a good movie. The point is that any technology we have or can reasonably envision is going to take a very long time to get to a nearest star. So it's going to take quite some time to do that. Now, the dream of interstellar travel is not new. The oldest story that I could find is two British archaeologists or specialists in Chinese history. They said some fellow named Wan Hu. They said it's a legend that he attached a bunch of rockets to his chair and was going to try to take off and go up into space. Now the story ends right there. Uh, the story is that he was never seen again. So if this story is true, my guess is he was the first launch pad fatality. The problem with this story is that two British guys came up with a story and published it, but experts on Chinese history, lore, legends, and things like that can find no corroborating evidence in Chinese history for this. But the idea goes back to the 1800s. We were thinking about going into space, even if somebody had to make up a story about China. Back here in the United States, Jules Verne wrote From the Earth to the Moon. He got some things close to what we did with Apollo, a conical shaped spacecraft with people in it, a multi-stage rocket. What he neglected was that firing this out of a cannon, the G forces would leave the entire passenger body mush against the back wall. But an idea from basically 150 years ago. Fast forward to the 20th century, we started developing rockets. A Russian fellow by the name of Tsiolkovsky had some theoretical ideas. Robert Goddard was an American about 100 years ago, came up with the first functional liquid fuel rocket. It was very primitive. The rocket motor was near the top. Thing only went about a mile up or something like that, but it was a liquid fuel rocket that could be controlled and could take off. Move into the modern space age. Sputnik was the first man-made object to actually go into space. It was considered the military high ground at the time. The Americans didn't have anything up there, and the Soviet Union had this thing passing overhead going. It was just the size of a large basketball, just a radio transmitter going beep, beep, beep. But here was Russian technology over our heads, and that got us going in the space race. As you well know, we did get to the moon first. Neil Armstrong did step on the moon. In the chat, I will caution you not to mention any conspiracy theories because I'm the person you don't want to argue with on this. My uncle was a technician on the Atlas rocket we used for Mercury. I have friends who followed the radio transmissions. I could give you a Baptist sermon on that, so don't get me going. But this is where we really first started going into space and started thinking about the ideas of what might be. We had lots of good science fiction that promoted this. We still do. Lots of movies and books continue to come out. But the idea is building on something that's been in the back of the human psyche for literally a couple hundred years at least. One question to ask. Star Trek was a fascinating series back in the 1960s. Could that actually get us there? This question was posed to me about 6 or 7 years ago. I was asked, is any of the stuff that we envision in Star Trek actually coming true? Is this a step toward Star Trek getting there? And I was surprised at what I found out on that. Um, Star Trek has deflector shields. Could we actually do that with a magnetic field around a spacecraft? Theoretically, yes. It would take a tremendous amount of electrical energy, but it could be done. Weapons on the Enterprise. I love the photon torpedo. I make a bad joke about shooting out a beanbag and calling it a photon torpedo, but they had lasers. I love the little handheld lasers. Back when I was a kid, I'm not the stupid kid here. I would be the one with the stupid grin, with the toy ray gun, and with the funky helmet, but my mother would never dress me in a shirt like that. But weapons back in Star Trek, we do have lasers nowadays. They are deployed a number of ways. So we're working on things there that Star Trek envisioned. My favorite is the food replicator. I thought that would be a great idea, but it'll never happen. Boy, was I wrong about that one. We can actually 3D print edible foods nowadays. Now, it's not 3D printing like you're making Lego blocks. You actually have to have the ingredients, but it is a step towards that. Medical technology, this was really funky back in the 60s. We loved to laugh at Mr. Spock with what we know to actually be a tape recorder, but they changed it and make it look like a tricorder or some kind of medical technology. But that was a little bit precocious there. We do have non-invasive technologies nowadays. When Eileen and I were kids, Mom had to stick a thermometer places we didn't want it to go. Now you just hold it up to your temporal lobe. Pulse oximeter, you can find out what your blood oxygen is without even breaking the skin. We have CT scans, we have MRIs. A lot of things have come along. So Star Trek predicted a lot of stuff that we're actually developing now. And this sounds like a positive thing, but not necessarily. Here's one where Star Trek violates the laws of physics. Warp factor 7. As best we know, as predicted by Einstein and all the scientific evidence that we have so far, nothing can exceed the speed of light. So we're stuck with the speed of light. Think about this. Alpha Proxima Centauri, 4 light years away. If we could get to the 90% of the speed of light, we're still looking at 4 or 5 years to get there. How do we get into space? Mostly, we still use chemical rockets. In fact, to get off the surface of the Earth, that's the only way we actually do it. We can improve things by strapping something to an airplane, taking it to a high altitude, and needing less fuel to get into orbit, but we still are using chemical rockets. And that is very, very expensive. And chemical rockets, you remember that car that was stopping for gas when we made a trip at Thanksgiving? We have to fuel these rockets. We burn up a lot of fuel. We get in orbit, and then guess what? No filling station, not even with a chemical rocket. You have fuel, and you're going to use it up. We do have some modern propulsion systems. Ion thruster, for instance, this actually works. We had a spacecraft that visited an asteroid named Dawn and then went to another one, or another one and then went to Dawn. I don't remember which, but it used a very low impulse ion thruster, and over time it could build up speed doing that. So that's one possibility. However, keep in mind that even an ion thruster has to have some kind of fuel. It's frequently an inert chemical like xenon, but you've got to have a tank of it, and those atoms or molecules are put out at high speed, and that's how you get your thrust. But again, you have a limited supply of fuel right there. Back in 1961, some experiments were done with a plasma thruster. This has a gas that is heated to a very high temperature so that it rapidly expands, and this is funneled out through a nozzle to get the thrust there. This is an idea that's still being worked on. There is an engine called a Vasimir. That is, a variable specific impulse magnetoplasma rocket. Um, This is an acronym I don't think even NASA had come up with. This is being developed by an Ad Astra rocket company. So it's something that's being worked on. It does provide a bit more thrust. It's not the best idea available, but still, even if they get this working over here, I don't know if you can see my pointer or not. I don't think so. Anyway, that blue thing on the left end right there, that is the fuel. And it comes around and goes out through all of this magnetic field and stuff like that, gets superheated and comes out as a gas. But again, fuel. Now, a frequent question I get is, what about a nuclear engine? Well, this was actually worked on back in the 1960s, putting a nuclear reactor in space. It never went anywhere. Bad pun there, it never got to orbit, partly because it was so heavy, it would require a lot of shielding. And again, we come to the fuel question. I frequently ask an audience, how long can a submarine or an aircraft carrier go without refueling? And people will invariably say 20 years. Sounds good. What do you do when the 20-year period's up? Come back to port, refuel the reactor. So again, fuel is going to be an issue there. Now, here's one that I wish we had a live audience and I had some sailors out there. They could help me with this one right there. You've heard of the idea of a solar sail, and this actually would work to a certain degree. The idea is you deploy a large, frequently mylar or aluminum sail like that, and sunlight, the photons in the sunlight do provide enough pressure to get this going. And over time, presumably it would accelerate. But there are two problems with this. The first is the amount of propulsion. Leaving Earth, you're looking at sunlight to push this thing away. As we'll see on an upcoming slide, the farther you get away from the sun, the less light you have hitting it, the fewer photons, the less thrust. That's an issue right there. The real biggie is any light leaving the sun is doing just that, going straight out. This thing can push you away from the sun, but that's it. Now, the reason I mentioned sailors, anybody used to sailing, small sailboat or anything like that, they know that they could tack into the wind. The reason they can do that is the bottom of the boat has a keel and it's in the water. If you have a sail on a spacecraft, you have no keel, you have no water, you have no directional control. So if you pointed this perfectly, maybe it could go to Proxima Centauri. Maybe you could turn it around and use Proxima Centauri as a braking mechanism. But if you're off by even a millionth of a degree, you're going to sail right by that star. So solar sail is a nice idea, doesn't require refueling, but the fuel, the sunlight that pushes it, that peters out. Big problem there. I'm not sure I'd volunteer for a mission that's going to sail off and never come back. You might feel differently about that. Science fiction buffs will ask about an antimatter engine. Theoretically possible. Now, I'm sure you understand that when matter and antimatter come in contact, boom, everything goes from matter to pure energy. But antimatter can be contained within a magnetic field, could be manipulated. Now, the problem here is technology. Our particle accelerators can produce antimatter. We know that. Doesn't last very long. It'll hit something else in the chamber, one molecule hitting another, and then poof, doesn't damage anything. But latest I've read, best I can find out, is all the particle accelerators in the world in the last however many decades, all the antimatter produced by all of them is barely enough to boil a cup of coffee. So developing the technology to use this in space and go to another star system, we're a very, very long way off from that. So let's summarize our challenges with propulsion systems. First is cost. This is the biggie with any space program. As astronomy fans, I'm sure we all like to support NASA and see a spacecraft go to Jupiter and learn more about it, but we have to balance costs there. On an individual basis, I frequently ask folks, think about this individually. Would you spend all your money on a vacation? And of course, the answer from a normal person is no. We have to provide housing, food, clothing, education, transportation for our family. We have to save for retirement and things like that. And then I ask, do you set aside a little bit for vacation? Oh, yeah, we do that. We as a human race have the same thing here. We've got to take care of ourselves here on planet Earth because our chances of going somewhere else are not really good right now. So we have to consider cost. Thrust. Nothing short of a chemical rocket produces enough thrust to get off the surface of the Earth right now. We can use a smaller amount of thrust to get around the inner solar system, Mars, asteroids, and such. But to get farther out, to escape the sun's gravitational field, yeah, Voyager 1 and 2 have done that. It only took them 40, but I think we're up to 47 years now. So thrust is another concern. And here's the biggie that I've tried to drive home: fuel. Everything that we've talked about, except that solar sail, and even that's going to require sunlight, everything that we've talked about needs some fuel. And when you leave our solar system, I pose the question, where are you going to get fuel, regardless of what your thrust mechanism is? That's the kicker right now that's probably going to kill us for the next foreseeable future. Energy. People ask about solar. Yeah, sure. International Space Station, that's about the size of a football field. You probably know that. Gets plenty of solar energy. That's one possibility. Nuclear is another possibility. Voyager 1 and 2, out on that lower left, you see those little cylinders. They contain radioactive material that generates heat, and that heat generates electricity for all of the instruments. But that is generating heat by radioactive decay, and eventually that will all decay, and Voyager 1 and 2 will have their final instrument shut down and go dead. So again, fuel is limiting even these ancient spacecraft. So the future for energy, sun, there's what it looks like from Mars. Here's what the sun looks like from Venus, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, and so on. If you can even see Pluto on there, I don't know. So we're back to this question. How are we going to get there? And how would we get to Proxima Centauri? No warp drive, no means of technology right now. I frequently get questions about warp drive, and I looked up some information on that. There's a book called Frontiers of Propulsion Science. This is a bit dated now, but a few years ago, it said it's basically not technologically practical to implement that. They require large amounts of negative energy, especially to get to warp speeds. And negative energy, to the best we know, is not going to work. Now, another question I get asked on warp drives is, somebody says, how about a wormhole? Well, a wormhole is a theoretical possibility. It would get us quickly from one place in the universe to somewhere else. And it is theoretically possible. However, that same theory, and this is from what I've been able to learn about it, wormholes are very unpredictable. We are not able to predict when they're going to pop into and out of existence. Another problem is that they are very unstable. We could go into a wormhole and the thing collapse and we're stuck in it, whatever that means. We don't know. And another problem is the wormholes are, as predicted, would be about the size of an atom. We're not going to get a large spacecraft into it. So, like I said, good science fiction, but probably not good science. Now, at this point in a talk like this or anything about wormholes, somebody in the audience will say, but don't wormholes really exist? I read on Facebook that they do. And the best answer I can give you is, yeah, they exist. I found this one in my backyard. But in space, no. Now, the question is, what can we do? Uh, this is a picture of a space station I got somewhere. And before I noticed, one of my audience members pointed out this is a hypothetical Russian space station. Right there in the center of the circle, you'll see CCCP. That is Union of Soviet Socialist Republics in the Cyrillic alphabet. Um, if we wanted to generate artificial gravity with a circular space station, you've seen that in science many times. In the movie The Martian, they have a section of their transport craft that rotates like that. It would not be hard to do if we get something about a kilometer across. That would be taking the International Space Station and scaling it up by a factor of 10. Certainly doable with enough money. And we get that thing rotating about once every 30 seconds, not very fast at all. It would generate artificial gravity. So building something big enough to travel between star systems is feasible. But again, material requirements, manpower requirements, basically the money. We don't have the resources to do that. Could be done, but we don't have the resources to do it. And even if we did, we're not sure that we've got a way to get it there, fuel, thrust, anything like that in terms of propulsion. So what we're looking at here are some considerations for interstellar travel. First off, the distance and the time it would take. If you leave Earth to go to another star system, you're probably not going to get to that star system. Generations that descend from you are probably going to be able to do that. Um, that space station, spacecraft, whatever it is going to have a finite mass. Maybe it's going to be 250,000 tons. Um, it will have no external resources. This means that we have to conserve everything. Recycling is the only way that you could keep that thing functioning. Maybe you could scoop up some hydrogen somewhere, but it's almost negligible going through the vacuum of space. So whatever leaves Earth, you have to keep and use everything. You cannot afford to get rid of anything. So conservation of resources is a biggie right there. And I'll come back to that in a minute. Number of inhabitants. How many people does it take? It's going to take generations to get to another star system. So how do you figure that into how many people are going, their genetic diversity, and how many is it going to take to keep a viable population without inbreeding? That's going to be a really tricky question. And here's one that most people don't think about. If it's going to take generations to get to another star system, and we have to conserve everything on that finite mass space colony, what do you do when somebody dies? Think about that for a second. You have to recycle everything. Now, this is a question that rings home with me. When my mother passed away, her body was cremated, and my dad, the engineer, who has very little understanding of emotional things, told the funeral home, just cremate the body and get rid of it. Now, that came along to haunt me, my sister, and my brother after my father passed away. We had my father's ashes interred in the Veterans Cemetery, so we've got a place to visit. But one thing we didn't talk about for several years and finally opened up about is we have no place to visit our mother. We remember her, but we have no place to visit. So this is a serious psychological question to be addressed. If you're on a space colony headed decades, generations to another star system, how are you going to deal with that if you have to recycle everything? Now, recycling is possible, Cremation is increasing in popularity for environmental reasons, but even it has its expense in terms of cremating the body. Another possibility that is not well known but is being used is composting human bodies. And you would probably have to do that on a space station. So we've got a lot of things to think about here. This space, I'm going to call it space colony, not a space station. It's got to be self-supporting, it's got to be self-replicating, and that includes human life and reusing everything. This leads not only to technological questions, but also some very serious psychological issues that we need to address and really understand fully. Other things follow from that. Long-term governance. How are you going to govern a space colony like that? This question is even going to come up when we have large colonies on Mars. Elon Musk says he wants to send 1 million people to Mars, and I love that idea. My first response was, do we even have that many politicians? There are a lot I'd love to send to Mars. Uh, we will eventually have colonies and cities on the moon, maybe on the moon, maybe on Mars. I think in my lifetime, another 20 or 30 years left, I will see boots on the ground on Mars. I don't think we're going to see cities there this century, maybe later in the century. That'll be beyond my time. But how do you govern those? What are the laws? How do you handle things like theft? How do you handle somebody stealing from another? If the colony is big enough, what happens if somebody harms another person, kills them? A lot of things to think about. And we would have to think about these things having a city on Mars. Imagine a colony taking off, leaving Earth, and never coming back. Will they govern themselves? Will they maintain resources? Will they even survive to get to another star system? That's a toughie. It's something I don't have answers to. I'm really just raising questions here. The only thing I can tell you is we are slowly developing the technology to leave Earth orbit to go beyond Mars. We are a long way from being able to go to another star system. I won't squelch that dream. I hope we keep that dream alive and NASA keeps working on these things year by year, decade by decade, even century by century. It's our human nature to explore. We want to get out there and find out what's going on. But we've got to be realistic about the problems and about the cost to overcome those problems. So don't give up on the idea, but at the same time, don't hold your breath. And at this point, we can take questions if anybody has posted in the chat. Eileen, I think, and Danny are monitoring those, and I think I've
Yes,
got access
sir.
to well.
Yes, sir. So there's lots of recommendations for books in the chat. And actually, your last slide reminded me of a book that actually was recommended to me by Eileen. And that's a book called Aurora by a guy named Kim Stanley Robinson, and it's about a generation ship and about what it would actually take to get there. And he's talking about like the balance of elements and how they take care of bodies and what they do if they run out of boron and what happens if one of the farms fails. Just all this stuff about what it would actually take, and just hearing you talk about it was just really, really cool because it's it's
I like these recommendations because Danny and Eileen and I were talking before the program, and I mentioned that my wife retired from Barnes and Noble. So if I tell her a book I want, I get it. She can find it or find somebody that knows where it is. That's a great idea.
yeah.
And Eileen mentioned Kip Thorne's book. I'm going to be looking for that one too.
Yeah, and then Mike Mitchell here recommended The Mote in God's Eye by Lahari Niven. Great book. I've read that one too. It's I feel like if I say anything at all about it, it will be kind of spoilery. So I won't. But it's a really good book. So
Okay.
okay, we've
That's an author I've not heard about, so I'm gonna have to look that one up too.
yeah, yeah. Let's see. Oh, Joe Joliard, who's editor, wants to know if you've read or seen the three body problem. That that seems to be based on kind of the Proxima Centauri star system in a very sci-fi kind of way. I've read that book too.
Okay. No, I have not read that one. I'm familiar as a physics teacher what is called the three body problem.
Right.
Um,
It's that,
how
but
they orbit each other.
yeah,
In the case of Proxima
it's
Centauri, Alpha Centauri, they're far enough apart that they're fairly stable over a long period. But as a subject of a book, no, I have not read that one.
okay. First question here comes from Chris, and I am going to not pronounce this properly. So if I need to spell it, then I'll spell it. But Chris is asking about the Alcubierre drive, or the Alcubierre drive. Is that how you say that?
Maybe
Hmm.
Alcubierre.
Let's see if I can find that up here.
Yeah, where Harry Niven and Jerry Purnell were the authors of The Mote in God's Eye. Great book.
Yeah.
I believe it's a series, but I think I only read The Mote in God's Eye.
No, I can't find that in the chat right off my hand, and I'm not familiar with that engine, so
Oh, okay.
I'm going to have to hold off on that because I would be talking out of the top of my head, and I really don't know there.
Okay. What? Well, we he might get that answer from you later. Um, what's the science about cryosleep? We've got a comment here by J. Harold Taylor that says that, well, I would go to sleep for the whole way. What's the science about that, and where are we as far as doing that kind of that hibernation state? Do you know?
Just know a little bit about that. I can only comment on what I know there, and again, I would classify that as good science fiction.
Mm.
We see that time and time again, but the reality is much less than that. Um, there is some work being done to not so much put people to sleep for a long time, but the one thing that we are doing, there are places you can find your body can be cryogenically frozen and so
Hmm.
theoretically brought back later. I don't think that has ever been successfully done. And as far as I know, there is no real science that shows much that we actually could put somebody to sleep for years and then bring them back because their bodily functions still have to go on during that time.
Hmm.
Now we can have somebody in a coma and we can keep them alive indefinitely,
Sure.
but that takes technology, it takes resources, and I'm going to say it takes people to monitor that. The comeback on that is, well, they take turns doing that. But that is, keeping somebody in a vegetative state for a long time is resource intensive. And this idea of sleeping for 10 years, um, let's make it 20 and go back to Rip Van Winkle. Uh, nice idea, maybe in the future, but
I
right
think
now, way beyond anything we could do.
as a biologist, I'm gonna just take a whack at it. There is no one that has been put to sleep and brought back, from a cryogenic induced state at this time. There's the real problem you got to deal with is not just the whole body, but it's the brain and the whole nervous system. And those cells are very, very sensitive. And so far, it's a great way to get people places in science fiction, but I don't think we're there yet. I don't think we're even close.
We've got a question here from a chef Ravioli. So that's a great name. And they want to know about mining along the way. So maybe you have a situation where you leave Earth and then you stop at the asteroid belt, mine some resources that can get you to the next step.
Yeah, that's a possibility. Asteroid mining, I expect that to happen in the next
Sure.
10, I'm not going to say 10 years, I'm going to say 25 to 50 years. A lot of resources can be obtained that way. But think about this, you're talking about the asteroid belt. It's in the solar system.
Right. Mm-hmm.
What are you going to do when you leave the solar system? Now, we do know that there are bodies, brown dwarfs, that float between star systems. We've begun to detect those, but they're very hard to detect. They're unpredictable. You cannot, in any one particular direction, count on finding a brown dwarf or even a star system with, we're headed between star systems, so we're headed between asteroid belts.
Sure.
And the idea of obtaining resources by mining something along the way, certainly feasible, but the probability of finding something to mine, that is minuscule. So idea I wouldn't discard. I'd keep it over on the side of the table.
Sure.
But we have to be realistic about the odds of finding something.
Kind of related to that, we have a comment from Gerald Taylor that says that he recently read that interstellar dust is actually a large percentage of water. I would assume it's frozen, but I had not heard that. That would be interesting.
Yeah, water is surprisingly common. It's
Mhm.
not in the form of water as we think of it,
Right.
but it is frequently part of the structure of different crystalline substances
Sure.
and could be obtained that way. Again, getting enough of it, I envision flying through space with a big scooper. Instead of a sail, we've got a big scooper out there scooping up whatever it can find. But the density of the space is not a perfect vacuum. It's got a little bit of stuff there, but the density would be so low that we would have to collect a lot. Again, a feasible idea. The odds of it working don't seem that great, but I'd put it over on the side of the table for our discussion, along with this idea of mining asteroids or brown dwarfs that we found.
Hmm.
So, ideas like this, I wouldn't poo-poo any of them. I would comment that the odds are pretty low right now, but
Sure.
this is where we get crazy ideas. I'll get off topic here and give you an example of a crazy idea.
Sure.
A very bad winter storm in Chicago when I worked for AT&T. They were brainstorming ideas on how to get ice off of the off the telephone lines, and they were kicking around all sorts of ideas. And one guy in the back of the room said, "Why don't we fly a helicopter over them and let the heat from the downdraft from the engine melt the ice?" And they went around the room and everybody laughed at him. And turns out that's what they did. He had the one idea that would work.
Oh, cool.
So this idea of scooping up water or mining bodies that we find, crazy, doesn't seem likely, but I wouldn't throw them away.
Yeah.
There's
Hmm.
probably some pretty good ideas.
That that reminds me of a crazy idea that I heard as a way to deflect at asteroids that are coming towards Earth is to shoot white paint at them to paint them white. And if you do it from far enough and paint the asteroid white, then the sun will absorb or reflect that white paint, and over the distance, it would change the orbit enough so it would
Yeah,
miss.
basically
Yeah,
what it does is heat up the asteroid, and then that heat is radiated back out into
yeah,
space.
that's cool stuff.
There
Yeah.
was yeah, there's something I can't think of it. It's oh, some spacecraft wasn't going exactly where it thought it was, and a lot of people thought, "Ooh, Newton's law of gravity must be wrong," but that's exactly what was happening to that.
Hmm.
And if you look
Oh,
up the orbit of Halley's Comet, for instance, everybody says, oh, comes around every 76 years. Well, it's not always the same. And the orbit is gradually taking just a tad longer. Material evaporating from it is one reason, but also that heating up and radiating out the heat is another reason it's changing just ever so slightly each 76 years.
That's cool.
That raises the question, could we paint our spacecraft white and get it to speed up that way? Maybe.
Aren't they? What? Well, I guess the shuttles were white, but Voyager and stuff, they're not white. They're yeah.
Yeah, the space shuttle was white primarily for keeping the temperature in it. You know, once
Mm-hmm.
they got in orbit, they would open the cargo bay doors to let
Mm-hmm.
heat out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was more for temperature control than anything. And also, if you watch the early shuttle launches, the very first one, you'll see that that large fuel tank was painted white. It was found out that
Oh,
was not
cool.
necessary, so that cut off about 600 pounds of paint.
Oh, jeez.
But
Okay.
paint's not going to get us to Proxima Centauri.
No. Chris here, who asked about the Alcubierre drive, is back with another one, the Star Wisp interstellar concept using microwaves and sails. That sounds cool.
Yeah, I've seen that one. Um, the idea is that we put a sail out there and then we aim a microwave beam at it. And theoretically, that would work up to a point. It becomes just like using the sunlight with a solar sail. The farther it gets away from Earth, the weaker that microwave beam is going to be. So it's got limited utility there. And again, we're back to the problem of once we start that thing off in a certain direction, we have no control over it. We can speed it up, but we can't control where it's going once it leaves Earth orbit. It's going to be subject to speeding up as we shoot those microwave beams at it, but we can't change its direction, and we'd have to plan ahead on what it does when it goes past Jupiter or any of the larger outer planets or anything like that.
Mhm.
It's a possibility, but it's kind of tricky. It's got a lot of drawbacks to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other questions? Eileen, are there any that I've missed?
no, I think so. You know, what I was going to add to it is that when we flew Sophia, one of the things that we studied were the chemical compositions of nebulas, as if you could dip in and get a bucket of water or something
Oh,
like that.
sure.
It's you've got all these other chemicals and very simple carbon compounds. So you'd have to have some way to separate all of that. Um, I don't know if you would get enough, but I think the recycling issue is the big thing that NASA has come up with and has touted for years. So, including urine.
Yeah,
Um,
I noticed Cheryl Taylor here has got a comment, polished aluminum better reflector than white paint. That's a good idea too.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I just like the mental image of us going to Depot and buying just thousands of tons of white paint and just like you know those t-shirt cannons, and just like using those to just shoot white paint up into the sky.
And I think the other thing I was going to say is that I do know that NASA is working on these programs, and it's really to achieve what we call torpor. And so they're looking at that easily to get people to Mars. Um, there's concern, when you're in Earth orbit, you never get tired. The astronauts say they never get tired of looking at what's below them. But when you're going out away from Mother Earth, um, it's not going to be quite the same scenic journey. So cryosleep would definitely save energy, save food, you know, just give them more to do when they get there, assuming you can revive them. But they are working on it. There's an aerospace company called SpaceWorks Enterprise that's actually working on that kind of a program, but it's not necessarily frozen. It's more like putting them into a cold torpor. Again, the real concern would be the damage to the nervous system, because our nervous system is way more complex. So
And I wouldn't want that for space. I would want that just like for my bedroom. Just like sleep for a week. Man, that sounds great.
well, this would be a couple of months.
Sure,
But
that too.
yeah,
Yeah, I was
I don't
scrolling back.
know.
Yeah, I was scrolling back through the questions, and I found that
Alcubierre.
Alcubierre Drive. Yeah, I've heard that idea before. In fact, a friend of mine who's a member of Mensa, he wanted to treat me to a milkshake one time, said he got some questions about space exploration. And when we sat down and I started listening to his questions, this is exactly what he was talking about. This idea is that you contract space in front of you and shoot it out the back or something like
Oh,
that.
okay,
It's
sure.
highly speculative. And my friend who was kind enough to treat me to a milkshake didn't want to hear my answer. I said, it's not going to work. We're experienced in working with things in 3 dimensions. Um, I can pick up a rock and throw it at the dog next door. The rock and the dog are height, width, length, mass, and all of that good stuff. And I can also bump my head on the wall when a student asks me a really interesting, I'm going to say interesting instead of stupid question. Um, I had a student one time ask me how many planets are there in the solar system that we haven't discovered yet. Think that one through. Anyway, we're talking about matter, mass, things that have mass or some kind of energy like light
Hmm.
or electromagnetic field or whatnot. We are not at a point of manipulating space itself. The only thing that we actually have any experience with and even any understanding of are things that exist within that space.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about manipulating space itself with this Alcubierre drive, and I have to shake my head at that one. Um, I've suggested we keep a lot of these ideas that don't seem practical, keep them because they may turn out to be practical. This is one that, every neuron firing in my brain and every moron in my brain says this ain't going to work. Um, Interesting idea. I wish we could do it.
Hmm.
Uh, but, you're going to suck up space and squirt it out the back. You're talking about doing that with a spacecraft that exists within that space. I think there's an inherent theoretical contradiction right there. So, an interesting idea to bring up. I'm glad that question was asked. Do, 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 do. Axis 96, whoever gentleman that is or lady that is. Interesting
Chris, yeah.
idea. And it really, things like that should come into conversations like this.
We've got a new one here. Might it be possible to use a microwave array that could act directionally? And then there's the comparison is made to phase array radar to push a sail. I assume a solar sail, left or right or up or down, so you would get some kind of basically use a combination of systems to propel a spacecraft up to interstellar speeds.
Yeah. Um, that would work if I'm trying to think if the first problem is the size of the sail and how far away it is. We could put more energy on the left-hand side versus the right-hand side, for instance. Now, what that's going to do is turn the sail, but in absence of something analogous to a keel in water, is it actually going to turn the spacecraft? Is it going to change direction or just change the orientation? I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Another
Interesting.
possibility is put the microwave thing on the spacecraft itself, and could that be a propulsion system? That's something I've never heard mentioned.
Hmm.
But again, that's going to use up energy, and E equals mc squared. Matter in that spacecraft is energy. So if you get rid of energy, you're getting rid of mass, and there you come up against your conservation of all resources question.
Mm-hmm. So what you're saying is that really the solution is for Interstellar, the movie, to actually happen, and a stable wormhole just needs to show up that we can drive through.
Uh, that seems like the best idea.
Yeah.
Not not like everything else we've talked about. Not a good one, but maybe the best idea. Yeah.
Are there any other questions? We don't want to keep you forever, but if there's another one that we can ask. One thing that you might know the answer to that came up, it was one of your first slides, and this might be beyond the scope. But you were talking about the habitable zones of planets, and when we are scanning an exoplanet, or when we are looking at these exoplanets, we are looking for things that are in the habitable zone, which translates to life as we know it. But that always seemed kind of weird to me, because in our own solar system, it's plausible that there is life, or was life, or has the potential to be life, like on the moons of Europa, or whatever, that has like methane oceans below miles of ice. So why do we only look in that tiny band and not maybe broaden that definition of what a habitable zone is? Does that make sense? Am
Yes,
I
it does.
going off the rails here?
No, it really does make sense. And the reason that we're doing that is we are looking for life as we know it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for us, we are a carbon-based life form. We require water. We breathe oxygen, yada, yada, yada. Eileen's a biologist that could put you to sleep talking all about that all day long. She knows a lot more than I do. But it's what we understand. It's what we know. And when we ask the question, is there life out there? Implicit in that is life as we understand it. Because there we've got something to work with. There we've got something that we can find clues to. And we're looking for places like Earth where life like us could exist. Now, one thing that is more and more present in the minds of most scientists is the definition of life does need to be expanded.
Hmm.
We are finding, and everybody in our audience has read articles about thermal vents on the bottom of the ocean and stuff like
Sure.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can find things that we didn't think any kind of life could exist. We basically are working with a broad definition of life, anything that is sentient in its own way and basically self-replicating. We are yet to expand much beyond need water, need oxygen, and all of that to find life somewhere else. Like, let's say we drill down into the ocean in Europa and we find something swimming along there, then that in itself, it's going to answer our question about is there life elsewhere?
Yeah.
And it's also going to raise questions about how do we redefine life to include what we've discovered? We may find, there's a Star Trek episode where there is a silicon-based life form, silicon being
Yeah.
similar to carbon, and Spock with his Vulcan mind meld or whatnot is able to communicate with the thing and find out it's injured, and they get some silica plaster or something like that, and actually basically put a band-aid on this species and save its life or something like that. And the idea of a silicon-based life form, it's not as stable as carbon, but it's a theoretical possibility. And we could probably expand anything beyond that. I expect there's life forms out there that are far beyond anything that we understand right now.
Oh, sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, and my wife and I have this debate regularly. We have since we got married 35 years ago. Uh, Theologically, I'm a flaming liberal Presbyterian, and she's a very conservative Lutheran. You'll find both of us in both church directories. We make that work, have for 35 years. But she says she doesn't think there's any life elsewhere. This is it. And I think the reason is it confuses her theology. Um,
Mhm.
what are you going to do if you find an alien race on another planet? How do you address the theology of that? And that goes way beyond astronomy here, of course. But she'll say, have you found life out there? And I'll tell her, no, not yet. The only possible answer to that question is yes. Is there life out there? And the answer becomes yes when we find it.
Hmm.
Until then, there are places we haven't looked and we can't say no. So, and not only
I,
places we haven't looked, but there are definitions of life that we have yet to discover. I wish I was going to live to be 500 years old and see what happens.
oh, yeah. Uh, Not to go back to books, but there is a C.S. Lewis book where um, uh, it's about a plant, and C.S. Lewis, obviously Christian writer.
Yeah,
It's
quite
all.
familiar with him.
Yeah, but he has a book or a short story. It's about a planet uh, outside of Earth and it talks about just what your wife is asking about
Yeah,
that sort of what happens when I I don't I don't know the name of it, but
I can probably find that.
yeah, it's a planet that like has to, yeah, that I yeah. So on that note, I don't see any more questions. Mike Mitchell, Mitch is our is he goes to a lot of Star Trek conventions, and he points out that at the one in Vegas, there are all of these talks about the science of Star Trek and just all that stuff, and that sounds cool. I would love to go. I wish she'd take me. I'd go with him.
There are several books that actually address that too that you
Oh,
can find
sure.
at Barnes and Noble, and it's the science of Star Trek, and there's one on Star Wars for those of you who are Star Wars people, or those of us, I should say. I like them all. I love the fact that you brought up the episode of Star Trek with the silicate entity, because it shows it was the, the same family of elements. So it got us all into chemistry, and instead of carbon based, there could be a silica based, and we see forms of life here on Earth that have used the silicates, so which is interesting. So why not other places? And I
Yeah.
think that's that you bring up the other point, and your wife is correct. We have not found life anyplace else yet. But we've also, if you look at our galaxy, just our galaxy, amidst the trillions and trillions of galaxies out there, we've only even radio searched just a small portion of it.
Oh,
They
yeah.
have a big, huge bottle of champagne at SETI waiting to open. I hope they replace it. I don't know how long champagne stays, because that one's been there since Frank Drake days, early Frank Drake.
Yeah. And I
days. So
assume they have wow written on the label.
they do. They do. The WOW signature, it's on the tag. So,
Yeah.
but
Before we close here, I want to thank everybody for the book recommendations. There's some really good stuff there that I've got to
Oh,
read. I really,
oh
really, really
yeah.
like those ideas. And I've got the chat kept over here so I can go through and make my list. And my wife is retired from Barnes and Noble, but she hasn't been in a Barnes and Noble bookstore since last weekend, I don't think.
I drove by the Barnes and Noble that's near me, and the employees were outside throwing snowballs at each other. So so that's what's going on at at Barnes and Noble these days.
Yeah, that's a good
Um,
place to get
yeah.
books out.
Yeah, well, we will let you go. Thank you so much. That was so cool and interesting, and we had lots of great chats and questions. And I'm sure we could talk about this for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. Like I have had to bite my own tongue to be like, okay, we don't want this to last until midnight. So
Yeah, well, maybe I can get out there for the star party in
yeah,
September, and we'll have a lot more to talk about over lunch and dinner.
yeah, you will be hearing from me about that
Okay.
for sure. So thank you, Jack, so much. You are welcome to stick around as we wrap this up. If you need to go, then that's completely fine too. But
Yeah, I'm gonna have to depart because my wife and I eat a late dinner, and I'm usually the
okay.
cook. So
Well, hey, thank you so much, and there's lots of thank yous in chat too. Just super cool talk. Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm happy to do it, and I really enjoyed the questions and the book recommendations. This has been a treat for me, the conversation and all. The book recommendations are great. I'm going to be ended up reading those over the next few weeks.
Oh yeah, I've read most of the ones that have been brought up, and I would recommend them all. Although, and I'm sorry, Eileen, I'm not a fan of Andy Weir. So
but The Martian, the way he researched it, I didn't like his beginning, but the rest of it,
yeah,
he really hot dogged it. And
yeah.
Hail Mary is I don't like some of his other books for sure,
Mm-hmm.
but Hail Mary was another fun one. Oh wow.
I thought The Martian was pretty good. And I did not like Hail Mary at all. But yeah, hey, and that's fine. That's fine. So anyway, thank you again, Jack. We will let you go. And we hope to see you out at Okie-Tex, and we can talk some more about this.
Okay.
All right.
And he has lots of other talks he can give, folks.
Yes.
So,
yes.
This was just
Well,
one
I'll be out. If I can get out there, I want to hear the
so
other
we
speakers
appreciate
too.
it. And yeah,
yeah.
you would love, I'll tell you more. We'll send you information about Okie-Tex.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, well, I'm going to
And the
leave now
rest of
because my
you,
wife's going to expect me to fix supper.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm probably going to get that question about are there life and is there life out there yet? Take care.
All
oh,
right. Take
thank
care,
you.
Jack.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Thanks again to our speaker. I'm gonna put us into a different scene so you can see us both here. Eileen and me. Yeah. So great talk. That's one of my favorite topics. I really like just thinking about like the impossibility of it, of traveling from here to someplace else, and then conversely what it would take for somebody else to come here. I could talk about it forever, but it's 8:30 and I'm sure everyone wants to eat their pizza and stuff. So let me go through a couple of things. If you are new to the club, let me go over some stuff. If you've never been to our website, then you can go to www.okcastroclub.com. From here, if you want to see what events are coming up, that is right there. To get to the newsletter that I talked about at the start, that is here on the left, the Gazette, and you can download that as a PDF from there. And then this is the events page that lists everything that we're doing. So you see that tomorrow is our novice session there. And then we have our member nights and our board meeting and just all sorts of great stuff. So if you have a telescope and you don't know how to use it, just bring it out to one of our events, and we would love to help you out with that and to show you some of the sky. We've mentioned the discussion board a few times. Let me close some tabs here. So that is here just on the left here. If you click that, that will take you to our discussion board. Yours may not look like this, but it should be pretty close. Can see that here there's just all sorts of stuff to chat about with your fellow OKC Astronomy Club friends. Free to sign up, free to use. Get on there. There's always some great stuff there. I would be bad at my job if I didn't talk about the thing that I actually am, that my actual job for the club is, and that is the Okie-Tex Star Party. If you don't know what Okie-Tex is, this year it runs from the 19th to the 27th of September. It is out in the panhandle of Oklahoma, and these are the darkest skies that you can see in the region. It's one of the best star parties in the world, and I'm not just saying that because I'm in charge of it. I'm saying that because we've been in magazines where we have been on lists as one of the greatest star parties. So if you want to come for a day, come for a weekend, come for the whole thing, come whenever you can. Registration for that will open in March. And even though we are out in the middle of nowhere, we do have a big building. There's heating and there's air conditioning. And there's a big building where we do full days of speaker presentations like Jack's that you just saw. Definitely going to try to get him to come talk to us at Okie-Tex too. Yeah, great stuff. There's catered food, there's Wi-Fi, there's everything that you would need. So if you've never seen a truly dark sky, make plans for September. Come to Okie-Tex. And I believe that is it. Eileen, do you have anything for us?
Just a question. What was the top number of people we had watching? I didn't pay attention to that, and I know it's dropping now, but
63.
That's not bad.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's 63.
And will this be live on our
Yep.
on our YouTube channel? So yeah, we'll have more people who will watch it afterwards.
Yeah.
It's a Friday night.
Yeah. If you missed parts of this, or you want to watch it again, or you came in late, as soon as I press the stop button, this will be available on YouTube to rewatch. So be sure to check it out if you missed things, or if you're looking for your next book to read. So yeah, so I guess we're not going to hide away tonight. I'm still waiting on that pizza that Dave was supposed to send. I'm not sure what the holdup is there, but hopefully that shows up soon, because I'm starving now. Anyway, that is it for me. Thank you to Eileen, who is just always just the absolute best to talk to. Thank you to Jack. Great talk. Thank you to all of you for coming. Sorry for kind of the last minute change. But we hope to see you in February. So stay safe, stay warm, and we'll see you next month. Hopefully back at the Science Museum. So good night, everybody.
Good night, people. Thank you.